The beauty of Star Wars Battlefront is that it very much embodies people's experience of Star Wars itself, in that some people grew up with the pandemic Battlefronts of the 2000s, others DICE's Battlefronts in the 2010s. It's like the trilogies. For some, their main Star Wars memories come from the originals, others the prequels, or for some, the sequels. Each Battlefront offered something different. The very first, this grounded, infantry-focused battle where heroes and villains supported you. The second, with the vast amount of heroes and villains finally being playable, this wonderful campaign narrated by Tamora Morrison, covering large sections of the galaxy, focused on the 501st and the events around Episode 3. Fast forward nearly a decade to DICE's spectacular reimagining covering the original trilogy, to the most recent entry in Battlefront 2 that started off horribly and ended as one of the best Star Wars experiences out there. I don't even know if I have a favourite. What I do know is, I miss Battlefront, man. Even now, where it feels like the multiplayer market is so crowded and competition is fierce, nothing out there is like Battlefront. I say that as a Star Wars fan, obviously, with a huge love for the franchise, and even though from the limited time trying something like Star Wars Hunters, I enjoyed it, but it's chalk and cheese. The market is crying out for a new Star Wars Battlefront, and this year marks 10 years since DICE's first Battlefront and 20 years since Pandemic's second. I cannot wait to do deeper dives on those later this year, but for today, I want to talk about Star Wars Battlefront, why I miss it, and what made it so special. The thing that I've always loved about Star Wars Battlefront is that there is no greater celebration of Star Wars. It is the culmination of everything that we love about the franchise. The music, the battles, the characters, the reinforcements, the sound design. It is pure Star Wars. Listen, DICE make unbelievable trailers in general, but Jesus Christ, man, the celebration trailer for when they drop their Rise of Skywalker content gives me chills every single time I watch it. Because wow, man, all of the feels from every moment, and it's all there in the game. You want to reenact the Duel of Fates on Naboo with Obi-Wan and Maul? Go for it. Feel immersed in defending your home with your brothers on Kamino, defend the assault on Crate in The Last Jedi. It's there. One of my favourite things that I used to do is just put on a Star Wars playlist, play some Star Wars Battlefront, and I'd just be in the zone. I could just immerse myself and forget about whatever else was going on in life and just escape and enjoy it. With The Last Jedi dropping just after Battlefront 2's release, I mean, the excitement was intense of playing Battlefront in the lead up to that movie. The same applies to any Star Wars, the Rogue One content, the Rise of Skywalker, the ability to synergize your excitement for one Star Wars product to then go and play that content when you get home from watching it. I think about how since Battlefront has ended support, we've had The Mandalorian, Season 7 of Clone Wars, Ahsoka, Andor, and even Acolyte, and just thought, oh man, if only Battlefront 2 was still going. Or a Battlefront 3. Mando as a playable hero, a special event for the Siege of Mandalore, Bad Batch cosmetics, Ahsoka, Cad Bane, Savage Opress. It kills me. Can you imagine a limited time mode of Luke fighting Dark Troopers? Enough about what we could have got, and how about what we did get? Watching Revenge of the Sith as a kid and then playing the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign with a focus on the 501st and the narration and seeing the events of Order 66 and being in it is one of those video game memories that you just don't forget and you really, really cherish. It was special. Shooting down the hundreds of Jedis in the libraries, and that mission as a kid, that was hard, man. That dialogue hit hard at the beginning of every mission too. Battlefront, even though campaigns were never the strongest point of it or the core of it, they were always fantastic to play through. Even DICE's Battlefront 2, that kind of misled everyone with this idea that we're going to play as the dark side the entire way through, and we didn't. I still thought it was a pretty enjoyable campaign when you put that to one side. As I mentioned at the top though, the multiplayer market is so fierce right now. So many arena shooters, Marvel Rivals just entered the hero shooter market and blew up big. A big extraction shooter coming later this year in Marathon, and yet, with all these shooters, I still can't think of a single one like Star Wars Battlefront that offers close quarter arena shootouts, heroes versus villains, or these large scale battlefield-like battles of air combat, vehicular combat, special reinforcements, and your squad of 4 feeling like the main characters. Everything out there right now is one or the other. Battlefront combine all of them together to give you the power fantasy of the heroes, the in-between of the special reinforcements, or feeling like a star-studded clone trooper from the Clone Wars series like Fives in Domino Squad. What I always loved is no matter who you played, you felt like you had a part to play. Even in the sheer scale of a galactic assault or supremacy, a well-coordinated squad could take out a Vader in the same way that Obi-Wan, you want troopers backing you up. It was always so cool seeing a separatist armoured tank coming towards you and your squad of 4 of heavies all whipping out the chain guns and just obliterating it together. It was special, and it's part of what makes multiplayer games so unique, and they're the moments that you play them for. Just like the simulations. Having one squad member be Vader and everyone else be Death Troopers and acting like you're on some kind of Jedi purge or hunt. The cinematic clashes and moments it would provide would make you feel like you're in your own movie, whilst everyone around you is battling. Rey could meet Kylo in the middle of a battlefield and you'd forget everything else that was going on around you and focus on that fight at hand. And speaking of cinematic, heroes versus villains, I always loved the idea of Battlefront reaching a stage where there was so much content from each era that we could canonize it, and we had Maul, Savage, Ventress and Dooku up against Anakin, Mace, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, for example. I remember the viral videos, really cinematic clips of the standoffs, and look, it never had the depth of a hero shooter in tanks and healers and duelists. It was very light versions of that, but it never stopped the spectacle. And for the pandemic Battlefront 2, I think Mos Eisley was a zone, wasn't it? Where all the heroes and villains converged on each other. And you had Darkseid Anakin, you had Kit Fisto. And the best thing about this was there was a lot of characters here that you weren't really too familiar with, or you never got to play as in any other game. And you got to here. And it was just this big, bombastic spectacle of all these lightsabers and duelists all fighting. And it was sick. A special shout out too to the original Battlefront, where you couldn't play as the heroes and villains, but they were brought in alongside you, and even though they weren't playable, it was this wowing moment of seeing Vader next to you in the heat of the fight. And just like the best Star Wars content in general, a Battlefront game isn't afraid to get goofy or weird. You know, DICE adding droids like BB-8 into the fray, but also I think most about Ewok Hunt. Nothing but being a stormtrooper with your E11 and a flashlight, whilst dozens of Ewoks stalked you in the starry night of Endor. So much fun. This one's a little bit more on the personal side for me, but I think multiplayer games, a lot of what makes them so memorable is about the people that you play with. And you'd be self-admitting about it, but my dad is bad at video games, like really bad. Sorry if you're watching, Dad. But the Star Wars Battlefront 2 co-op mode allowed us to play together. And that helped us create some really fun memories, because this is the franchise that he brought me up as a kid loving. So to get to play across all the eras with him in every mode, it was great. And he'd be good at it. Good enough anyway. He'd be able to actually play as heroes or villains that he wouldn't get to in multiplayer because he wouldn't get the points. And we get to play all the maps, eras, and just have a fantastic time. And we've done that every year since release. Whenever Star Wars excitement is or was high, we'd play it and we'd love it. At least when he actually could work out how to turn down the in-game volume and be able to hear me. But that's what makes these games, that's what makes them so special. That's what these games are all about, is the memories and the fun you have with the people you're playing with. And that's what the Battlefront games are about, man. Providing moments with friends, family, or strangers who could go on to become friends. Again, someone who is now a good friend of mine, we'd spoke over a Discord server, and then we played Battlefront 2 together for months, across different time zones, and now we're great mates. I think that online multiplayer memories and community are higher for the DICE games, considering how far online has come, but the community of the DICE games, so much fun, and so special that I wish it was around now so that I could create content for it. The CT-WEN, getting to hear and interact with developers on it, the big update trailers, Dennis going on stage and announcing something new. I look back now, and I just miss it. The community excitement, the tens of hours of playtimes with friends, whether that was 20 years ago in split screen co-op in 2005's Battlefront, or loading into a big 64 player match across a war-torn Kashyyyk. DICE's Battlefront 2 in particular, I played with so many people because it offered so much. An opportunity to hop on, chill in some co-op and catch up. The opportunity to become immersed in these large scale battles. The opportunity to create your own cinematic showdowns, or the opportunity to laugh hysterically as Ewoks get absolutely slaughtered. For as much as I've spoken about reenacting Duel of Fates, the showdown on Mustafar, defending your home on Kamino, the Star Wars Battlefront games are just as much about making your own stories. Battles spanning across Felucia, being in Darth Maul's ship in space, just such a fucking sick ship by the way, and just annihilating the enemy team. Lando Calrissian taking on Darth Vader, BB-8 running rings around Captain Phasma, being the one sole stormtrooper to extract from that horror night on Endor. The DICE games in particular created a different level of immersion in Star Wars for me, that really only few studios I think are capable of achieving. Turning off the hood on Geonosis and Hoth, and the level of fidelity present in those games is just astounding. And when you pair that with the sound design of the iconic blaster fire, the speeder engines, the ignition of lightsabers and the way they clash, it added so much depth to things that you've only partially seen in the movies. The interior of Starkiller Base, the tunnels of Crate, the cloning laboratories of Kamino, the lush and dense Felucia, or a personal favourite of mine, Sullust on the first DICE Battlefront. Such beautiful landscapes of iconic planets and locations that spanned as far as Kessel from Solo or the sun-soaked Scarif of Rogue One. I couldn't talk Star Wars Battlefront without of course talking about Pandemic's Galactic Conquest. What a mode, man. I mean, talk about making your own stories. How about D&D in Star Wars Battlefront? Iconic. I said about how Battlefront lets you make your own stories in the action, but how about making your own entire plot lines? When the Star Wars Battlefront collection dropped last year, I was on a trip, and I downloaded it to my Steam Deck, and I was a child all over again. Conquering the galaxy, building fleets, defending invasions, strengthening reinforcements. Like, this shit was gripping back in the day, and it's still fantastic now. Having a separatist invasion come out of nowhere with minimal resources, a backs against the wall situation, and you've got to defend that planet with your life. Oh man, special times. Leading the invasion of user-powered General Kenobi, man was it good. I appreciated DICE's efforts to recapture some of that magic with Supremacy. It embodied some of that energy, but I would have loved an offline mode like that at some point. But I couldn't talk about Star Wars Battlefront without talking about how special that mode was. And that's what I love about all the Star Wars Battlefront games, by the way, is that they are also incredibly unique and offer something different from one another. The heavy infantry focus on the first ever release, the playable heroes, Galactic Conquest, and the gritty campaign of the 501st in Battlefront 2 2005, Battlefront Renegade Squadron, Battlefront on the go. The return 9 years later with DICE resurrecting the franchise, absolutely nailing the feeling and aesthetic of the original trilogy with more focused squad gameplay, and Battlefront 2 of 2017 finishing as one of the greatest tributes and celebration of Star Wars. I feel more strongly than ever that we need Battlefront back, especially now. Star Wars is spanning across more timelines than ever, more possible heroes and villains than ever, more locations to flesh out, battles to be had, moments to remember. But I asked myself, but who? DICE were the perfect team for Star Wars Battlefront. Their ability to create the immersion and realism in that Star Wars sandbox to recapture that same magic. I look out there and I just don't know if there is a team that has that same ability. I'm sure there is, but Battlefront isn't just any other multiplayer game. I think EA are done with collaborations, and after Iron Man, Jedi 3 and Black Panther, they're just going to look internally at their own studios. I mean, they have 4 studios working on the next Battlefield game, so I think they're all in on that. The thing is, Battlefront isn't just the Star Wars franchise, it's the iconic Battlefront one. There's a legacy here that goes beyond the care and crafted needed for just Star Wars, that I just don't know who would want that kind of responsibility. All I do know is, I miss it. I miss the couple casual games with a friend after work. I miss the exciting announcements and trailers. I miss the community speculating what's next, creating viral moments. I miss the synergy of knowing that a brand new show or movie will somehow work its way into Battlefront, and I'll have multiple things to be excited about. I look at Marvel Rivals and the juggernaut that has become, and I think to myself, surely it's so obvious that a new Battlefront game could be gargantuan. That every year, Battlefront 2 is in the top 20 most downloaded games on PlayStation Network. Look, if you're on PC, not all hope is lost. The Kyber mod and extension is due to launch this year that will offer some things I've mentioned like Cal and Merrin from Jedi Survivor, Ventress. If you're interested in that, I'll leave a link to the Patreon and the project in the description down below so you can find out more because they deserve support for the great work they're doing. I hope we eventually see a brand new Battlefront. And if that day comes, holy shit, it will blow up. I need that. We need that. Star Wars to me is still so very special. And Battlefront is a large reason for that. Whether that was the pandemic Battlefront games or the DICE ones. About the friendships made, bonds tightened, and memories had. I don't know if we'll ever get another Star Wars Battlefront game. All I do know is, I miss it, man. Tell me though, some of your favourite Battlefront memories. You've heard some of mine, now I really want to hear yours. Do you have a favourite Star Wars Battlefront game? I'd love to hear from you on this. If you also miss Star Wars Battlefront, consider dropping a like, let them know how much we miss it. And look, if you're after Star Wars content, you're in the right place. News, reviews, guides, streams, the full shebang. If we ever get another Battlefront, I got you covered, so consider subscribing. Otherwise, I hope you have a terrific day. Play games, get gains. I'll catch you next one.